Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with another hot take. Uh, Today I'm going to talk about what if Biden wins. I don't think Biden could possibly win this election, but if he did, I think it would be absolute chaos. Um, I think Trump's going to win, and not only is he going to win, he's going to win by such a wide margin that the media class, when they try to tarnish it, will look weak in doing so. I think their rollout's going to be something like, well, he won this state early on, but there's some controversy he may not have won it, and they never should have called it for him because that allowed him to win all those other states, and that's why he cheated. This will be like a convoluted, like lame way to point out the win like that when Trump gets reelected. But if Biden gets reelected, quite frankly, it'll be a shocker. It'll be a stunner. It will be to me. I don't think it could possibly happen. But let's imagine somehow it does. Let's imagine that the Trump supporters get so complacent or they foolishly mail in their votes and then, all get scrubbed from the rolls somehow. That Biden wins. So what's going to happen? I think probably the first thing that'll happen is he'll be on track to retire. I don't think he wants to be president. I think he's running simply because the Democrats begged him to, and they have no one else. So I think he'll be on the fast track to retire. I think almost immediately they'll start laying the groundwork of why Biden's too exhausted, too old, and can't handle it. And they'll make the transition, I think, probably within the first year. It'll be like, well, they're going to get the White House set up, and Biden's going to do a few things that he wants to do, but then after that, they're going to start immediately transitioning so that the VP, and they're going to line up the next VP. But the VP is going to become president, but Biden's going to have a hand in picking the next VP, who's also going to be a woman of color or whatever, some woke thing. And then they're going to set out to undo everything that Trump did. But it's not really going to undo everything Trump did, right? Because in order to do that, they're going to need the cooperation of Congress. And I think the down ballot elections, the Democrats are in real trouble. They're in real trouble. They might somehow magically beat Trump, right? But there's no way those down ballots are going to be anything but red. It's going to be red, 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 red. And so they're going to lose the House and lose the Senate, and then have Biden in there. They're not going to be able to pass a damn thing that Biden wants because everybody in Congress will just stop him, and the media will hammer Congress all day long. They'll just hammer them. Oh, this is an outrage. The president wants something, they can't get it, and that kind of thing. And eventually, they'll start passing things. The Democrats really better hope Biden doesn't get elected and they lose both houses by a veto-proof majority. I mean, I don't think that's possible mathematically in the next election, but imagine if it did, then that would be the perfect situation for the Republicans. They could pass every stupid, unpopular law they've ever wanted to pass, and Biden would get all the blame, right? Biden could come out and say, oh, I can't do anything. I'm just the president. I veto it, but they keep going over my head. Oh, no. Or whoever, replaces him would say that. But who would want that job? Who would even want that position? Do you think Biden wants to be that president? Do you think anybody wants to be that president where you've got neither house? When Al Gore lost, quote unquote, the 2000 election to Bush, he immediately, almost immediately, conceded, right? Florida was close and it hadn't been counted, but he rushed to concede. And then he had to unconcede because it was so close and they were counting ballots and whatnot. And really, the Republicans had cheated. They had kicked people off the rolls they shouldn't have kicked. What was her name? Kathleen Harris ran the Bush campaign down in Florida and was largely responsible for kicking a lot of people off the rolls, all with the help of George W.'s brother, Jeb Bush, who was governor at the state at the time. And as I said at the time, if my brother was governor of Florida at the time and I was running for president and it was that close, I wouldn't even have to make the call. So let's be honest here. They stole the election. And what did Al Gore do? He couldn't wait to concede. And the reason he couldn't wait to concede is he knew he'd be facing a hostile Congress. Who the hell would want to be president if the Congress is completely against you? You couldn't get anything done. Yeah, you could veto stuff, but they could overrule you and you'll look weak. And overall, that would be a bad look for your party and your legacy. You wouldn't have a legacy because you couldn't get anything done without completely compromising your principles. Not that a guy like Biden wouldn't have that problem, but they've polarized things too much. So the reality would be Biden would have a choice. He could either stay in and compromise everything and just pass whatever the Republicans wanted, or he could retire, which was probably the sensible option. Just get the hell out of there and let the VP handle it and let that be a total disaster. And, what could someone say is VP's Kamala Harris, right? What's she going to do? Okay, you're president, Kamala Harris. Now what? You got a hostile Congress. You can't pass any legislation. All you could do is complain all day. And nobody likes you. Kamala Harris has a huge likability problem. People don't really like Biden, but they don't hate Biden. I think most people kind of feel sorry for Biden. He's kind of a big dope, but they don't perceive him as mean. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, I think her perception is one of meanness, one of kind of a hypocrite, one who talked about smoking pot while she was prosecuting people who smoke pot. I mean, it's not a good look. She didn't come off at the debates too well, so I think Kamala Harris would have a tough time. As VP, she could just hide, but as president, you can't hide. So Biden, being elected would actually hurt the Democrats more than it would help them, I think, at the end of the day, because their brand would be so utterly destroyed by the end of that 4 years. They would literally spend 4 years getting nothing done. And, you could say, well, it was the Congress's fault. But that's not who gets the blame in these things. It's the president who gets the blame, or the kudos, in the case of Trump, when they do something wrong or right. And the president and the legislature have to work together. And in this polarizing climate, that's a non-starter. It's a total non-starter. I mean, you think you see riots now. Imagine Biden as president, and then he keeps caving into the Republicans. Oh my God. They will burn down Los Angeles in that case. I mean, and think about the kind of stuff that the Republicans will put up and force Biden to sign. Because now they can sit back and pass the really crazy stuff. They can make him pass all kinds of crazy stuff. Because otherwise, he's not going to pass anything. They just vote it down. So, in some ways, it's better for Trump to be elected for the Democrats. Because, look, they need to lose. They need to lose and come to terms with 2016, which they've completely ignored. They think they got robbed, and no, they blew it. They blew it. They thought they had it, and everybody fell asleep. Oh, and their own media was so for them. They gave them a false sense of security, and they lost. They completely effed the pooch on that one. So this time around, I don't think they can win, but if by some miracle they did, it would make it even worse. It would be the end of the Democratic Party. Biden would have to become dictator in order to bypass Congress at that point. He'd have to start throwing Republicans in jail. That's not going to happen. No one's going to tolerate that. They'd remove them in a second. Same thing with Kamala Harris. A famous Republican by the name of Abe Lincoln actually deported a political rival, believe it or not. And he was in Congress, and Lincoln deported him. But I don't foresee that happening in this world. I don't think I don't think Kamala Harris, as tone deaf as she may be, would think, well, I'll show these Republicans, I'll get them kicked out or in jail somehow. No, that's like crazy talk. That's like Saddam Hussein level of dictatorship, and we're not headed there. As crazy as 2020 has been, we're nowhere near heading into some despotic rule by a hellscape, Trump or Biden. And if you believe that, you really, really need to get off Twitter and stop looking at stuff on Facebook. Just stop. Just get off of social media and get your head together. Because understand that the media shows you the worst. If it bleeds, it leads. And that's what's in your head. And you got to unplug for a few weeks, get your head together, because it's just not that bad. And Biden, he's going to lose.